Okay, good evening, dear friends. We're continuing in Daf Hashavua, Maseches Nedarim. Daf Chavches Amud Beis. We begin the Mishnah on the bottom of Chavches Amud Aleph. Harei netiyos ha'elu karban im einan niktzatzos. Let's say a person says, these plantings, these young trees, should be a karban if they're not chopped down. If these trees are not chopped down, they should be a carbon. So simply, what is taking place over here? You're answering them. What does it mean you're answering them? You're saying they should have kedushas haguf, and you redeem it, and the money is used to buy karbanos. And it's the Mishnah is saying this is a way to be makdish the animal. That's the simple pshat how the Ran learns. We're going to see on the other page. Or the Ran has an additional pshat, namely that it's referring to just a neder, and sometimes the word karban is a way of making a neder. So if a person says these netiyos should be a karban if they're not chopped down, or somebody says talis zu karban, this talis should also be a karban if it's imeina nisraf, if it's not burned, yesh lohem pidyon. They have redemption. You could redeem them. You could redeem them means that they need to be redeemed, and that the kedusha is effective. Says the Ran, Harei hanatilos elu karban yesh lahem pidyon, kolomer the kedusha chala alehem ad shetzrichos pidyon. The kedusha is chala on them until they need pidyon. Uve Gemara mafarish, the Gemara explains lamalei lamemra. Why? What's the chiddush? Why would it not be chal? Umefarshina nami, the Gemara will also explain amai tana hay lishna to yesh lahem pidyon. Why does the Mishnah teach this lashon that they have pidyon v'loy tana behedya kedushos, and instead of saying that it has sanctity? In other words, if the point is that it has sanctity, just say the sanctity is chal. Why say it in this unusual way that yesh lahem pidyon? Okay. Ein lahem pidyon. Okay, let's see the end of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, if you say Harei netiyos ha'elu karban ad sheyikatatu, if you say let these young trees be aser until they're cut, talazu karban ad shetisarf, this talis should be a karban until it's burnt. So in the first case, you say these netiyos should be a karban if they're not cut, where the talis should be a karban if they're not burnt. So then we say it does have a pidyon. But if you say that it should be a karban until they're cut, or it should be a karban until they're burnt, so the Mishnah says ein lohem pidyon, then there is no redemption. Okay? So we have to understand what this Mishnah is trying to teach over here. Now, if you look in the Ran on the second line, some say the koinam v'hachi kamar harei hanetilos halalu asuras kikarban. Not that they have kedushas haguf, but rather it's kedushas neder, like a karban. So then the question is, if you're just saying that it's asur, what kind of pidyon is there? You're not poida nedarim. So when you make a neder, there's nothing to be poida. Says the Ran, v'chitema imkein heichi shayach b'koinam pidyon. How is pidyon shayach by a koinam? So the Ran says, Yeshama d'masnisin Rabbi Meir. The Mishnah is Rabbi Meir, who holds that if you make a general koinam that's asur to everyone, like hektish, there's a pidyon. So there is a concept of pidyon when you're dealing with nedarim, if it's not just a neder to you, if it's a neder to everyone. Now, okay. So So basically, the beginning of the Mishnah is that you are makdir something al tanai. You said, if you don't cut it, if it's not burnt, then it's kadosh. So the Gemara says, "Velisni kedushos ve'enon kedushos." Why does the Mishnah say there is pidyon and there's no pidyon? The Mishnah should say that it has holiness in the Reisha or it doesn't have holiness. Let the Mishnah just say there is kedusha or there's not kedusha. Since the chidush is that the kedusha is chal or is not chal, why wouldn't the Mishnah say it straight? Says the Gemara, Aidi debay lemisni seifa ein lohem pidyon. Since in the seifa it wants to teach that there's no pidyon, there it's a chidush that there's no pidyon. So Tani Nami Reisha Yesh Lahem Pidyon. The Reisha says there is pidyon. Okay. So now the Gemara has another question. Hechi nadar. What is the way that he made this nadar? Think about it. He says, if this tree is not cut, this planting should be a carbon if it's not cut. What does that mean? Eventually the tree is going to be cut. No tree stands forever. So since no tree stands forever, the Tanai can never be fulfilled. The looking around Velisni Kedushais, Kachi Ikar Hagersa. This is the main gersa. Valchi Perushai. Vadai Ikar Chidusha Datana. Certainly the main Chidusha Datana is Loimar, is to teach Shafal Pisha Chala Kedushasan B'Tanai that even though this Kedusha is Chal in this Tanai, Shal Kitzitza Kedusha Chal Aleim. Even though the Kedusha is still Chal. So the main Chiddush is that the Kedusha is Chal, V'itzrach Lashminan Hachi, and it needs to teach this Kedem Mefarsh L'Kaman, like the Gemara is going to explain why it's a Chiddush that the Kedusha is Chal. If so, Imkein Lisni Kedusha, since the main point is that the Kedusha is Chal, so just hit the nail on the head, that the Kedusha is Chal. Then the Gemara asks, how did he make the neder? Says the Ran, Perush Lishna Kashale. The lashon of the Mishnah is difficult to the Gemara. To Kataniim Einam Niktzatzais, if they're not cut, they should be holy. V'kivan shetala Yisurim b'Tanai, since he was toila the Yisur in this Tanai, Heich Yachal ala Isur. How will the Yisur be chal? V'asoifel Niktzitzahin. Eventually the tree will be cut. Heinaim Dais. V'hahu de Kashalei. We're only asking on the Reisha. We're asking on the Reisha, what do you mean? You're saying if this tree is not cut, it should be holy. But that's not possible. Eventually it will be cut. We don't have a question on the Seifa where you say it's holy if it's not burnt. A talis lav l'sreifa kaima. A talis is not oimid l'sreifa. Ve'avshir shalai tisarf la'olam, and it's possible it'll never be burnt. Mishum hachi, therefore, mehashta chayla isur alei. From now the isur is chal on it. Ve'ika nischi tegarsi behedya. There are nuschais that are goyres behedya. V'halak tzitza kaima. Where the Gemara spells out the question. Where the Gemara's question is not just hechi nadar, but l'ktzitza kaima. Okay, so the Gemara says that if it's not cut today and the day goes by, then it's holy. So says Gemara, if that's the Tanai that it has to be cut today, then of course the Kedusha is Chal. What's the Chiddush? Then there's nothing to say. Pshita, it's obvious that the Kedusha is Chal, because it's obvious the Kedusha is Chal. You made a Tanai, a very reasonable Tanai, that may or may not be observed, and if the Tanai is not fulfilled, the Kedusha should be Chal. Says Gemara, like Tzricha, the case is, you know why we need it? Going to Ika Zika Nefisha. There's a big wind. So the guy expected the tree to blow down. So when it doesn't blow down, who says the Kedusha is Chal? Maybe it's like an asmachta, the guy was dependent, the guy assumed the tree would fall down. Right, the Gemara asks, Im kein lamali l'meimar, kalar medabshita, to have a hektish. Anyway, the answer is, the guy says if the tree doesn't fall down today, it should be hektish. It's Pasha, it's going to be hektish. No, it was very windy. He expected it to blow down. Says the Gemara, says the Gemara, proof to this is the Seifa. Because v'haktani la gabe talis. We learned by talis that the guy says if the talis doesn't burn down, then it should be holy. The talis is sreifa kami? Is the talis primed to be burnt? Of course not. So then what exactly is the Tanai? So it must be, it's in a case. In other words, what's this guy saying? If the talis is not burnt, then it should be holy. What kind of Tanai is that? Why would a talis be burnt? So it must be the case is in. There's a fire, and it might be burnt. So Achanami, the case of the Reisha is the Ika Zika Nefisha. There's a big wind as well. The Salkadaitach, the Chiddush, as I would have thought, the Masik Adaite Dulai Misnatzlan. You would have thought he assumes that it won't be rescued, and it will burn down, and it won't be holy. Umishamachi Kanada, therefore he made the neder. But he never expected that the tree wouldn't burn down. Kamash Malan, that it's a valid neder. Okay. Then in the Seifa, Hareya Netilos Elu Karban, if these Netios should be a Karban, Ad Sheyiktzu Talis, Ad Sheyiktzu until they're cut down. Talis Zu Karban Ad Shetisaref, then it's not, the Kedusha is not Chal. So the Gemara asks, Ula Eilam? What does that mean, Ula Eilam? What's the question of Ula Eilam? And forever? What does it mean forever? It says, it has no pidyon. What, you can't ever redeem it? Why can't you ever redeem it? Why are you not able to redeem it? You're saying it should be holy until it falls down. So why can't you ever redeem it? Especially after it falls down. Look at the Ran. The Ran says, "V'talis l'sreifa kaima b'tmiya," with a wonder kalamar v'hechi tali tanoi. Tanai, how could he hinge the Tanai? B'midi d'loi shayich ba, something that it's not shayich. Alavadei b'de shayich ba askinan. We have to be talking about something that's shayich. Could go into ika d'leika. Okay, so the Gemara's kasha is ula oilam perish b'tmiya kolaymar heich efshir shelo yehei lahem pidyon la'olam. How is it possible that there's never pidyon? Amar Bar Pada said, you know what it means? It means, since he said it should be holy until it falls down, Padan chayzois v'kaitshais. If he redeems them, it becomes holy again. Padan, if he redeems them, chayzois v'kaitshais, it becomes holy again. Ad sheyikatzatzu, until they fall down. Niktzatzu, but once they fall, Padan, if you redeem them, pamachas v'dayo, and it's enough. So listen to what Bar Pada is saying. You know what it means, Ein lahem pidyon? It means, since you made it tonight, it should be holy until it falls down. That means it should be holy, 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 holy. And if you redeem it, then it's a good redemption, but then it becomes holy again. And if you redeem it, it's a good redemption, it becomes holy again. So you could redeem it, it's just since you made it tonight, it should be holy until it falls down. It will just keep on becoming holy and holy until it falls down. Now you would expect that after it falls down, you don't even need to redeem it, because he says it should be only holy until it falls down. And Bar Pada says that once it falls down, if you redeem it once, it's good enough. So when the Mishnah says Ein Lahem Pidyon, it doesn't mean never redeem it. It means that the redemption doesn't work before it falls. See the Ran. In other words, what's difficult here is why doesn't the Kedusha just dissipate on its own once it falls down? So Gemara says, the Ran says, Amar bar pada, padan chayzas Kedushais, kalaymar, ki katani in lahem pidyon. When the Mishnah says they don't have pidyon, hainu, kozman shaloi niktzatzu, so long as they're not cut. V'lav lememra shaloi yahem pidyon klal, not to say they don't have pidyon at all. Kalaymar shaloi yehei pidyoinam nitfas b'kedushasan, meaning that their pidyon should not take effect on their kedusha. Dimkain my chayzos kedushas. What does it mean? That it becomes holy again. When we say it doesn't have a pidyon, it means it won't be permanent. Because why would then be chayzer v'kadosh al-hachi kamar? Ein lahem pidyon lo'itzian mikdushas, and they don't have a pidyon to take them out of their kedusha lagamri. But it could take it out, but it will come back in. Since you said it should be holy until it's cut, harehu ka'omer befeirosh. It's like you said explicitly. Harei hanetilos ha'elu carbon me'ata. These plantings are a carbon from now. V'karban l'chshayiftu. And it should be a carbon even after you redeem it, kozman shalayiktzatzu, before it falls. V'nimtza pidyoinam kadosh kol shah. It comes out there, if you redeem it, it's kadosh temporarily, because it indeed goes l'chulen, ela shala alter chayzos v'kedosh. It just becomes holy again. Now, why if it falls, doesn't need to be redeemed, says the Ran. Niktzitzu paidan pamachas v'dayoy. Why? Disrir leila bar pada. Bar pada holds she'afal pishla yikdishan ela ad sheyiktitzu. Even though you only sanctified it until it falls, afilu achi ki niktzitzu, when it falls, loy paka kedushasan b'chti. The kedusha doesn't go off on its own. So two things bar pada is saying. Number one is, before it falls, if you redeem it, it will become holy again. The second thing is, after it falls, you still need to redeem it, and the kedusha doesn't just dissipate on its own. The Ula Amar, Ula says, Kivan sheniktzatzu shuvein paidin. Since it's cut, you don't need to redeem it. Now, one way to learn Ula is, Ula disagrees only on one point. He says pshat in the Mishnah of Ein Lohem Pidyon means before it falls, if you redeem it, it will become holy again. He agrees to that. Everybody agrees pshat in the Mishnah Ein Lohem Pidyon means if you redeem it, it doesn't take effect for good because it will just become holy again. He just argues on one tiny point. He just says that since he stipulated it will only be holy until you cut it, after you cut it, the kedusha leaves and you don't need to redeem it. However, and that's how the Rashba learns. If you look in the Ran, 2 lines down, because of our Rashba, the Ula loy polig ad dvar pada. He's not arguing on him. Ella balachar sheyiktzetzu. Only after it falls. The bar pada loy paka kedusha b'chti. According to bar pada, the kedusha doesn't dissipate. Ula paka. Aval ad sheyiktzetzu. But until it's cut, l'kulei alma pada and chayzos kedushais. Everyone agrees they become holy again. V'hainu diktani. That's what the Mishnah says. Ein lohem pidyon. Now, that's not how the Ran learns. The Ran learns that what forced Bar Pada to say that if you redeem it, the Kedusha comes back? He had explained the words, Ein Lohem Pidyon. They have no redemption. Why couldn't they have no redemption mean that after they fall, you don't need to redeem it, because the Kedusha goes off immediately. No, Bar Pada could not accept that idea that the Kedusha goes off immediately. So he was forced to say, Ein Lohem Pidyon means that before it falls, if you redeem it, it becomes holy again. But Ula, who says that after it falls, you don't need to redeem it, he could learn Ein Lohem Pidyon means after it falls, you don't have to redeem it. He's not forced to say that before it falls, if you redeem it, it becomes holy again. Because he has a much simpler way to read the Mishnah. Ula could read the Mishnah. Ein Lohem Pidyon means after it falls, you don't need to redeem it. So he's not stuck in this doichek that Bar Pada is, that Ein Lohem Pidyon means if you redeem it, then it becomes holy again. So Ula Ketaka hold that if you redeem it before it falls, it doesn't become holy again. And what does Ein Lohem Pidyon mean? Ula says Ein Lohem Pidyon means after it falls, you don't need to redeem it. That's how the Ran learns. Look, the Ran on V'ula Amar Akiman Sheniktasu Shuv Ein Paidan Desvirle She'ein Kedushasan Nimshechas Ela Ad Zman Shekdeishan Aval Me'oisai Zman Ve'elach Paka Kedusha. But according to Bar Pada, one second, I think I'd find, which would mean, take a look, 5 lines from the bottom in the Ran, the Hachacham Haggadah Rav Moshe Kartabi, the great wise man Rav Moshe Kartabi, Chalak Alav, he argues on the Rashba, V'amar, the Bar Pada Ula Batarti Pligi, they argue on 2 things. But it's really, one is hinged on the other. V'haba ha'talya. Demishum desvirle Bar Pada. Since Bar Pada holds the Kedusha, like Pakala B'chli, that the Kedusha doesn't go off. Which means you need to be paid it. Ka'amar de Padan Chayzos Ukedoshas. He's forced to say, Ein Lohem Pidyon is going on before it falls. Di'lav hachi, lamalei l'hai gavra l'meimar, ad she'ikatzatzu. Because otherwise, why did the guy have to say, if the Kedusha just goes off by itself, why did the guy have to say until it falls? The Kedusha can't go off by itself. So what exactly, meaning the starting point is Bar Pada holds Kedusha doesn't dissipate. If Kedusha doesn't dissipate, why did the guy say it's holy until it falls? It's not going to go off after it falls. So if Kedusha is loy paka b'chli, he should have just said it's kadosh indeterminately, forever. It must be, you know what he meant until you redeem it? I'm sorry, you know what he meant until it falls? Until it falls, it becomes holy again and again and again and again. So therefore, when it says Ein Lohem Pidyon, it's not saying you don't need to redeem it when you cut it, because you do. The it means she'ein pidyonim moitzian lechulin. It's not going to take it out permanently lechulin ad sheyiktzatzu. But Ula argues. Ula says the reason the guy said ad sheyiktzatzu is because it only lasts until then. V'amar delachas shekatzu ein tzrichem pidyon. The kedusha paka b'chti. So according to Ula, you have no reason to say that it will become holy again once you redeem it. It's not coming to say that even if you redeem it, it becomes holy again, but it's saying it's only holy until that time, and then it's paka. So in other words, this Rav Moshe Kartabi is saying like this. They argue on 2 things. They argue on whether it will become holy again, meaning the Rashba says everybody holds it will become holy again before. They only argue whether Kedusha is paka b'chdi after it falls down. But the Ran says no, they argue about both points. You see, Bar Pada's starting point is Kedusha doesn't just dissipate. If it doesn't dissipate, why'd the guy say it's holy until it falls down? But it's not going to go off after it falls down, because Kedusha is not Paka B'chdi, so he's forced to say that after you redeem it, it becomes holy again. And Ein Lohem Pidyon is saying that exactly. But according to Ula, that Kedusha could be Paka. That's why he said, Ad Sheyiktzetzu. And that's what it means, Ein Lohem Pidyon, after it falls. So he's not forced to say that before it falls, it becomes holy again. And the Rashba holds, they both agree that until it falls down, if you redeem it, it becomes holy again. They only argue afterwards whether Kedusha is Paka B'chdi. That is Daf Chav Ches Amud Beis. And B'ez Hashem, next week, hopefully it will be regular schedule, B'siyata D'Shmaya, that we should be able to come and return Gesundheit at the right time. We'll continue Daf Chav Tes, where the Gemara is going to ask, well, what do you mean the Kedusha just is Paka? Where does it go? Rabbi Say, have a beautiful night. Shkayach, Kol Tov. Thank you. Amen. Thank you. Kol Tov.